How you doing? This is Frank Cucciardo with orderplans.com, a division of PKAD Architecture and Design, and we are talking shop here in the shop. We're here at Cool Beans Coffee Lounge in West Sayville, right across the street from the golf course, having some cappuccino and some mochas, and I have my friends and colleagues and guests here, Mitch with Integrity Expediting and Merri with Iannone Renaissance Expedite Associates, and these are some colleagues that we work with very closely in the field. They're expediters. Mitch tends to keep his practice very focused, which I love, through Islip and Brookhaven and the Hamptons, and Merri will go to places that nobody wants to go. She will go everywhere and anywhere. She's a brave woman and will do the things and the work that very few people want to, such as you name it, North Hempstead, Oyster Bay,
Incorporated
Villages, North Shore stuff, places where it is tenuous. So what we wanted to do today was just talk a little bit about what the expediters do, talk a little bit about how the architect interfaces in this space, right? So now the expediters, you guys could do, you're going to handle. And you'll talk about what you do, but in the space here, we're really kind of focusing on rectifying title deficits. There's a real estate transaction, title comes back, and there's a violation, and sometimes the architects are needed, and sometimes they're not, right? But when there's a title deficit, orderplans.com, right? We'll provide the architectural documentation to rectify or help to start the process of rectifying the title deficit. We use some great tech, and then we're going to put the plans in your hands to go from there. So just what's the environment like, dealing with the towns? Maybe just talk a little bit about, kind of what you do, and because sometimes there's some confusion, right?
Right.
Well, what does the architect do, and what does the expediter do? And, it means you do this, or it means you do that. So, I mean, why don't you just talk just a little bit about, what does Integrity do?
Yeah, so Integrity Expediting, we are the company, the person, the team that is going to handle the interface between the homeowner or the contractor and the town. So additions, alterations, anything that happens to a home that requires a building permit, whether it's existing or proposed, we are coordinating that entire process to make sure that plans are approved as necessary, permits are issued appropriately, and inspections are passed, and we coordinate any of those deficiencies and help explain those details of what needs to be adjusted to pass the inspection, and final documentation to make sure that the certificate of occupancy, certificate of compliance, or licenses are actually issued appropriately. Because sometimes, and I say appropriately because sometimes details get missed on permits. Permit gets issued for X, Y, and Z, but they forgot A, B, C. So we make sure that things are thoroughly and appropriately issued to streamline the process, so that way there's no confusion, and that in the future for title deficiencies, hey, this house has a garage conversion that was done 25 years ago, and the owner bought it that way, but now all of a sudden it came up. So we would come in and address that, pull in all the documentation we need, get it to the town, have the permits issued, inspected.
Right. So you're not just carrying paperwork from A to B.
No. I have a particular team member who does our running for paperwork, but there's a lot more involved in analyzing the zoning and the necessary permits, and what do we need a permit for, what don't we need a permit for, what do we need plans, what don't we? So there's a lot of communication that goes on as well.
So Merri, yesterday I called you on this client she's trying to close. There's a little bump out on the house. The Oyster Bay won't issue the CO on this. They can't close. The builder wants to come, and the shame of it is the builder wants to knock the building down. So it doesn't really make a difference what happens.
Oh man,
that's ridiculous.
Well, we'll talk about the insanity of the bureaucracy.
There's a lot of insanity.
She's stressed. She has to close, and we sent the team out. We scanned it. We modeled it. I'm fast tracking this. I don't know. Maybe from the time that we were on site, she talked to me on a Wednesday. we were on site on a Thursday, and I had preliminaries tour on Tuesday. I mean,
That's fast.
That's
That's
super
fast.
right? It's a little something, a little small. So now, what's today? We're Thursday. So yesterday, I was telling her, you should really think about having an expediter. And she goes, well, I just isn't it just take a piece of paper and take your plans and bring it to Oyster Bay? And I said, not really, but you could try.
Right.
Why is it not really?
It's not really because that's the very simplest reduction of what it is. There are updated surveys, Oyster Bay in particular, 6 months
Right.
they want. So
say
if
that again.
Oyster Bay in particular wants a survey that is no older than 6 months. And that's because they're looking to make sure that what you're asking for, there's nothing else that's being omitted because you forgot or you don't want to tell them.
Right.
So they are very, very stringent about that requirement.
So in Oyster Bay, because I had another client in Syosset hand me something from 1978
No good.
and was insisting that this is good.
It might be legible, it might be accurate, but it will not be acceptable.
Might even be to scale.
And
I can
it
start
might
my
it might
work.
even be to scale.
Yeah.
Right. And I can start my work, but this is not getting over the table.
It will not be able to be submitted. They will not take it in.
Right.
They will look at it and say, survey date needs to be, you have to have it updated.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, when that survey is updated, suddenly there's a shed or a deck or a roof over patio or the driveway's been widened or a big terrace has been added or, some addition or a bay window. Things happen
Essentially,
over
yeah.
30, 40 years of somebody living in a house.
Right.
And they don't always get caught or reported by a neighbor,
Documented. They're not
right, and they're
documented
not
at the time.
documented at the
Right.
time of sale. So by the time that comes, they pull the title report, they get the new survey, because usually the buyer's attorney insists on a new survey. Then they look and they go, there's a lot of stuff here that's.
Yeah, this isn't just.
So it's not just running up and down the stairs in the Oyster Bay or
Mm-hmm.
going to the ancillary, the Massapequa auxiliary office, right? It's more than just bringing paper over.
It's knowing that you need certain documents and they have to be executed correctly. It's knowing that if you're maintaining, who's taking responsibility for that, meaning under insurance, under license. So a homeowner, 9 times out of 10, doesn't have a plumbing license or electrical license or a contractor's license. So there are things that have to be done so that the town will accept it. Some places, Oyster Bay, I don't think so, will not accept a homeowner saying that they're going to do the electrical work. You have to have an electrician. So that means you have to find somebody
Right.
who's an electrician, licensed in Nassau, in Oyster Bay, who's willing to
Right.
take responsibility for work that somebody else did 25 years ago.
Right.
That's an expensive undertaking
Sure.
for him because he's putting his license,
He's
his
exposed,
reputation,
right,
his
exposed.
insurance, yep,
Sure.
all on the line.
Right.
But these are things that they want protected because God forbid that house goes on fire and the homeowner
Who's-
says,
Yeah.
wants to start, suing, who are they gonna go
Whether
after?
they're gonna go through
Right.
insurance.
Right, oh, they're gonna go after the
Roadblocks.
town, you gave me a CO for this,
Correct.
it was not correct. So everything comes down to who's responsible, who's liable, and how do we protect them?
Right.
And so that's a lot of the other issues, insurance documents, waivers, homeowners can attest that their insurance is gonna cover it.
Right.
And so then they take responsibility off, and that usually only works with a contractor, they don't usually do that for the other trades. But, there's certain things that have to be shown on the drawings that they may not know. Somebody might say, and I've had this happen in Brookhaven before, oh, just draw a floor plan. It can be on graph paper. And then by the time it goes through, we need energy calcs because it's this and we didn't know it was that.
Right.
We need, structure, we need brace wall
Yeah.
details, and the homeowner sits there and they start drooling because I
Right.
don't know what any of this
Right.
means.
Right.
So it's not just document management. It
No.
really is more, you're kind of quarterbacking we'd have to do our job, right? The documentation of the conditions and the notes
Right.
and the structure and the calcs and the stamping and the we're telling the town this is to code.
Right.
And we're putting our license
Right.
on the line with it, and that goes over. Now you take that, but there's this whole other piece, right, that is navigating the bureaucracy,
Yeah.
and not just navigating the bureaucracy, but getting the permit out,
Right.
right? So like in the one example in Iceland, right, where we had a situation,
Yeah.
and we're dealing with a short-term time frame to closing. The seller has an open CO, we've documented it, we've had rapid response, you filed it, and now the inspector needs to come out
Right.
and look at what work was done.
Right.
Are you leaving that to the homeowner in a real estate transaction, or are you offering? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so what we want to do is custom tailor the experience for our client, because sometimes, let's say for example, we're brought into a project from a contractor. Hey, I'm doing this build, I need a permit, and then I'm taking it from there. Okay, then I'll bill you X for my services, and I hand you the permit, and the ball's in your court. That's great. For somebody who doesn't want to think about this process at all and have to deal with meeting with the town inspector and figuring things out, we're there. One of my team members will be on site.
What could go wrong if the inspector's there with the homeowner?
You say too much.
I mean, what possibly could go wrong? The town's walking around in your home. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
why would they want that? Especially if you're trying to sell.
Well, let me interrupt you with a story. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Because
please.
I had a lovely couple, an older couple, and they lived in their house 30-something years, and they finally put a generator in. And they file with the generator company, files the permit, they get to the inspection, and the final inspection goes, and the inspector's there, he's ready to sign off, and the husband says, I have to ask you a question about a sink, and he takes him into part of the house where there used to be a kitchen, but nobody's in there. It's not a rental. It's just she uses it for like Thanksgiving and Christmas cooking. And they brought him into the house. He was never going to go into the house. They brought him into the house, and he looked at that and he said, you can't have this. And it started a whole thing. So they had to take out the stove. The sink had to go down to a little small bar sink.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, sure.
it was very, very specific. It wasn't a big job. It was clearly not an accessory apartment.
Right.
But he literally walked him into the house, and I said to the poor guy, I'm like, you didn't think, like, he's like, no, well, isn't he supposed to be there to help me? I said, yes, but he's also going to do his job.
Right.
And so if you show him something, he's going to tell you.
Right.
So he got a violation.
Right.
You know, he didn't have to go to court or anything, but
Right.
they
Gotta fix
did
it.
make him address it.
Now it
Right.
And-
slows down the whole thing.
Right, exactly. So
It slows down the process.
That's the thing is when we have a specific permit for a specific addition or alteration that needs to be addressed, we want to come in, be about business, get through it quickly. We have our plans. We could point out to the inspector, here's what it is, here's when it was built, here's the pictures. Everything looks good. Let's wrap it up. Have a nice day. You know, we want to get through that process, and we're not looking to hide things. We're not looking to make an issue of things. But like you said, Mary, it's if I just say, hey, well, what do you think about this, or what do you think about this? There's a chance. Oh, wait a sec. Did I just, I hang out long enough, I hear a smoke detector beeping somewhere in the house, or some other code deficiency that may be getting addressed in the closing of a home. But we're going to put in new smoke detectors anyway. But that has nothing to do with this deck
Exactly.
or this
Right.
garage conversion that's going on.
Right.
So we want to move through those with as minimal amount of hiccups. And because here's the thing, that inspector has probably never been in that house before, so they're not familiar with it. They're going off of paperwork. And this house has a CO from 30, 40 years ago.
right.
Did it change orientation? Wait, do I have floor plans in this file? Wait a second, hold on. What? That kitchen looks new, and no, let's just get in, get out,
Our
do what we
client
need to do.
in West Hempstead,
Mm-hmm.
right? She was an investor. She buys the house, and she buys the house with all the problems from the last owner. Because the problems don't go away. It stays with the life history of the building.
Of the
Yep.
property, yep.
Right. She cleans up the surface violations of trash, illegally disconnected from the main service, the electric's been cut. She cleans all that up, and while the inspector's on site to clear the violation, he's looking and says, oh, that load-bearing wall is gone.
Yep.
I don't have that. That kitchen's been relocated. I don't have that. These stairs aren't where they're supposed to be. I don't have this.
Right.
New violations. Now,
Yeah.
they have to. I mean, what would they have to do at that point?
For the town of Hempstead, they would have to file something to maintain as-built conditions.
Yeah.
And that involves a full set of plans, as if it's being done from scratch, with
Just the area, just the
the
stairs?
whole house. They want the whole house, including the basement, everything. Because it's giving them an opportunity to find yet more violations.
Exactly.
So, yes, there's human health and safety that's involved in a lot of this, especially with finished basements. But there's also a degree of revenue generation that occurs. And I think that a lot of times, they're kind of encouraged from the sidelines, just generate revenue for the town, and it also keeps people occupied, gives them jobs, something to do. But it's borne by the homeowner. The expense is borne by the homeowner.
Right.
And
So
sometimes
this isn't something that they could just do on their own.
Here's what I would want to point out, just as we were chatting before, something I think, like the services that we offer, like you're saying, it's not just running paper. What I tell my clients is we look to explain as much as we can ahead of time, because for most homeowners, they've never heard some of this vocabulary before.
Right.
A CO, maybe they've heard little bits of it here, but they've never gone through the experience themselves. So what's super important, I've noticed with all of my clients, is if we can manage the expectations up front. We've been through this hundreds of times, so we know what is going to happen. Every now and again, you get the really oddball loophole, like you can't cut down trees because there's an endangered species of bat. Okay, that was a curveball.
Nobody saw that coming, right?
You gotta hire the archaeologist.
I got one of those going right now. So anyway, but the general package is, hey, I've been through this. We know what this can turn into. So let me lay it out for you right now.
Right.
What could happen and what options we have to maybe avoid some of these pitfalls. Oh, you have a fourth bedroom, but wait, your home's built prior to 1975. Now you need a new septic system and all these health department
And nobody expects that.
Oh,
no.
Nobody
Like,
expects
what?
that.
No, so we won't get into this in this episode.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
It's a whole episode. We had the land engineering, and we talked about the pitfalls, but that's a real serious thing, because now, and I mean, that's a good segue. And this is really how the expediter and the architect are going to, especially when we work closely like we do. We'll go out. You'll put the order in, or the homeowner put the order in. We're on site inside of days, and I have 7 to 10 business days. I have rough floor plans and elevations in your hands. Hey, Mary, Mitch, this client's got 2 bedrooms in the basement.
Do they have egress?
Did they have egress?
Right, exactly.
No egress, right? So now we're game planning at day 7 or 10.
Exactly.
And we're saying, okay, hey, mark this up, talk with the homeowner, tell us how you want us to approach the town. Because now this is a little bit of a huddle, right? And we're saying, okay, well, it's a 3-bedroom, and they have a 3-bedroom system, but the house was built in '64. They have an original, right? And now they have 2 more rooms in the basement that are considered bedrooms. So now they're looking at a $35,000 to $50,000 septic system. Or we can say, let's open up the door and make it a 5-foot framed opening without a door, and now let light, vent, and egress and all these things kind of go. So the game plan.
So then then we address zoning and New York State code compliance, especially with basements. What's our ceiling height?
Yeah, that's my first question. Is there egress? What's your ceiling height?
Egress and ceiling height are the 2 big ones for basement, because, all right, do we need to make some changes somehow? And then additions on the outside of the house. Hey, you're going, you're within, you're in a zoning conflict here. So are we going to try to go for a variance here and add 2-3 months to this process and extra thousands of dollars? Or would you rather just eliminate that?
Pull it back.
Cut it back to this distance, so that way we can fast track this and get it done as quickly as possible.
So we're having this conversation, and you're dialoguing with the client, and then which in turn allows us to then be efficient with our time. Right. So in this space of maintaining existing conditions, legalizing, maintaining, especially in a title deficit situation where there's a real estate transaction happening, it makes no sense for the architect to be going down to Brookhaven to drop paper off. The same way, it doesn't make sense for them to be necessarily talking to me about game planning on how to get it through. So you're as equally as important as we are. It's like, we operate as a team, and there's no one that sits more important than the other. It all has to happen together. We
Right.
just do different roles.
Different roles,
Exactly.
Right. I can't, if I'm a quarterback, I can't be the receiver as well. I can't throw the ball to myself.
Right.
That's a mess.
We're trying to accomplish the same
We
goal.
gotta get the ball in the end zone.
We got to get the ball in the end zone. We got to get that CO. But we need to strategize, and we need to make this happen the fastest way possible.
Correct.
And if there's a financial conflict, what's the least expensive way
And
possible?
maybe,
Right.
maybe there's, maybe we have to get back in touch with the real estate agent to let them know how it's going, or maybe there's dialogue with the settlement agent, or the buyer's attorney, or whomever on the legal side, the transaction side, to say,
Right.
hey, this is, what we're finding, right? So it's this
There's a lot
Th-
of-
th- There's
yeah.
that, and then there's also, I find, I don't know if you find this as well, sometimes a client will ask me a question that is more of a legal question, and
Yeah.
I have to redirect them back to their
No,
attorney.
exactly.
I can say, look, if you're a family member, I would encourage you to do it this way, but I cannot give you legal counsel. You have
Yeah.
your attorney for that.
Correct.
You need to go back and talk to
Correct.
your attorney.
Right.
Whatever they say is the right way to do it, we will adapt and do it the
Right.
way that's
Right.
that's
Right.
going
No,
to
exactly.
not screw up your closing, or not mess up your financing, or if we have to break this into pieces in a certain way so
Yep.
that we can get things through in an order that everybody is happy and calm
Yep.
about, then that's fine.
Right.
Yeah, that's right in my agreement. We are not a law firm. We don't
Right.
provide
Mm-hmm.
legal advice. And especially when it comes to a closing, I tell them, I said, that's an attorney question.
Yeah.
And they say, well, can you talk to them? Okay, we'll talk to them. Well,
Absolutely.
Here's your options.
Absolutely.
Often we lay out, okay, here's your 3 different options to solve this problem. Here's estimated costs and time frames.
Right.
What do you want to do?
Right, exactly.
Right, and I would say this to all the attorneys out there. We know that your time is limited. We know
Yeah.
that, this is probably a volume in a lot of ways for these guys.
Yeah.
We want to make your job easy. We want to let the problems go away and be very quick about making sure that the deal is protected.
Right.
And the homeowner can sell, and the buyer can have the home that they want, and everybody's happy along the way.
Yeah.
So if we stay on the football analogy, if we're all huddled up, right, and we're going to call the play, then we got to play against the defense.
Yeah.
So the defense, in my mind, is like the town. Like they are preventing. They're not on purpose preventing, but we have to get through their defense to get into the end zone.
Yeah.
So that's a whole probably episode, and we could go on forever about the stories that we have. As equally, I'm sure that the building inspectors and the plans
Oh,
examiners
yes.
about their
They
stories
also
about
have stories.
knuckleheads on the private side.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
I get it. Okay, anyone watching, I get it.
Yeah.
Right? However, when I sometimes hear, well, if I hire an expediter, will it get done faster? My typical answer is, it's still going to take time to get through. We can't eliminate that. But the trips to the town, maybe. I mean, you talk about it. When you say expedite,
Exactly.
like,
Right.
sometimes it's a misnomer because they think they're going to get a permit in 2 days.
Right.
Why don't you talk about that?
Could you imagine? It's permit in 2
Oh,
days?
that would be great.
That's like South Carolina territory, you know? But no, like, and the way I explain it to potential clients is, oftentimes they'll call me and say, why am I calling you? So-and-so told me to call you. Why am I calling you? Why do I need you?
Right.
What is an
Right.
expediter? How come I don't know what you do? And well, because you don't know that you need me until you
Until
find
you
out
need
that
me.
you need me.
Right.
And then you're like, crap, I need this person. I don't even
Yeah.
know. I got to give them money for what? So I generally explain to them that we have spent years, or in some cases decades, doing, this type of work. We
How long did you do
understand.
this?
1984?
1984.
1984. I was 18 when I
You were
started.
18? Okay, and just generally speaking, so everyone knows,
Mm-hmm.
how many files do you think you've handled since you were 18?
Oh my God, 2000? Is that probably, at least
Thousands.
thousands. And, the reason why you want somebody who, knows what they're doing is because I'm going to get you all the documents that you need to be signed and notarized 98% of the time, the first time around. I'm going to tell you what you need from your attorney. If you need a copy of your deed, if you need, a closing, surveys, I will tell you what you need. Get it all to me once. If I know I need photographs, I will tell you I need photographs. we can get the package assembled quickly without chasing our tail, trying to figure out what does this mean, what is this document? You know, if somebody says I need a BD 120, what the heck does that mean? Oh my God, I don't know what this is. So, okay, I have a ton of them in a file. I
Yeah.
pull them out and I'll scan it and email it to you,
Right.
and you sign it, notarize it, and we send
Right.
it to the town.
Yeah.
So, hiring an expedite or someone who does this, you're getting their expertise, the fact that they have touched these documents, had these conversations, seen these conditions, and dealt with these situations hundreds of times before.
Right.
And that part of it, the front loading part of it, is
Yeah.
going to get done more efficiently.
Okay.
Once it hits the building departments, we are not in charge of
Yeah.
their time frame, their vacation time, how they work, how they're scheduled, you know, any of that stuff. It goes in, and you hope to God you get a good person who's
Right.
going to review
Right.
it and do their
Right.
job correctly. That being said, you know, a homeowner who's never done this before, you know, might not know where to go to get their deed, and might call 4 people before they find out, oh, it's either in my closing papers, or I can ask my attorney, or I can go to the county. So it takes them a while to find the thing that they need, whereas I'm sure you can tell them, look here, if it's not there, call your attorney.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? He has a copy of your
Exactly.
closing papers. So there's
Yeah.
just things that you learn just by exposure to it.
Mhm.
So I had a person come in who asked me to do a variance. They had gotten the building permit done, and were working back and forth together. And so I took over the variance for her. And by the end of the whole thing, she was like, you know, if you asked me to do this now, I could do it no problem.
Right.
But it was so much aggravation and heartache
Sure.
for her to get to the point
Yeah.
where she got through all that. And she's like, I am not doing the variance. Here,
Right.
you take over the
Right.
BZA. You know, she's
Yeah.
like, I got it this far. I can't do anymore.
Right.
And you know, so it's just repetition,
Yeah.
muscle memory,
No,
you know,
exactly.
And there
exposure.
must be some relationships built that if a plans examiner sees that your name is on a file,
Yes.
you might get that file might get, you know, you might be 5 or 6 deep, and they looking through and like, oh yeah, it's Mitch's or Mary's. They always have their stuff together. Let me do this one first, because it'll make me feel good that I got one off my plate, as opposed to these 4 homeowner specials, rejected. Where's one I can get through? This is coming back to me. They see your file and they pick yours
Right.
fast.
So you remember the one in Hempstead? Sorry, just shut me
No.
up when you need me to. Remember the one in Hempstead where they needed all the original plans for the
Was that the?
Wisteria, I think.
Yes, that was
the
the
one in Wisteria.
that was Mr. Thick.
Yes,
That was his top work order.
right.
New
So
homeowner
Ugh.
purchases a leaded house,
Mhm.
rips the load-bearing wall down, takes the fireplace out,
yeah,
like is holding the main load-bearing structure together with like twist ties,
Mhm.
like homeowner special.
spackle tape was
Spackle.
keeping it together.
Yeah,
Oh,
spackle tape
no.
is holding up the house. Right.
And
Yes.
so you got an omissions back after we filed that,
Right.
and they wanted to see, because there were things that were done between the last submission to the town back in the 80s and this submission now, so
Now.
there were gaps,
Right.
and they wanted that filled in.
Yeah.
Right.
So I reached out to the plans examiner, who I deal with all the time. I've been dealing with him for 12 years, and I sent him an email to his personal email. Hey, I ran into this problem. This was during COVID still. I don't think everything was completely
Right.
open. It was just starting.
Yeah. So Wisteria.
Yes, so I was able to email him directly. He responded to me within minutes and sent me the files from the town, the PDFs of the original plans, so we would have a starting point, so I wouldn't have to go down there. He wouldn't have to make an appointment with me, and it would save time.
Right.
And that's 12 years of relationship that
Yeah.
got that
And
done.
I think that project, if memory serves correct, because he was in Wantagh. He called me like on a Monday. We were on site like by Thursday.
Mhm.
I had plans to you ready to go in like 15 business days.
It was quick. It was a
real
quick.
fast.
That was quick.
You filed it, and I think they had permits in hand ready to go. I think it was like a 2-month turnaround.
I was less than that.
I think
I
it was
was
less.
shocked.
It was like 6 weeks.
I was shocked at how fast that one went
was
through.
setting land records.
And that was with an omissions.
Correct. And a lot of that is a combination of our rapid response and your relationships. And
Mhm.
that is how a firm like ours designed for this and your experience ties up.
Yeah, just a thought on that, Mary. You're exactly right when you talk about the key for an expediter. The benefit of the service is putting that submittal packet together once to get everything in that we need, so it's not, oh no, your survey's outdated, or you're missing this form, or you forgot a notary signature there. So we put that packet together. And the key with working with local, knowledgeable architects for the plans is really helpful, because every town has their specific requirements, or the ways that they review plans, or the specific notes that they want. There's no need to get an omission or deficiency report back because they were missing specific details that they should have known to include on those plans for that town. And maybe that sounds kind of complicated, but if you have somebody local, and with order plans, we've been able to identify our checklist of, okay, we got a project in Islip. Here's what they have to have on their plans, so we don't end up going through this roundabout of 2, 3, 4 omissions. Oh, we have to submit it for review again. That's another week, 2 weeks for review. Right. We want to have it drawn properly with all the details that they need, and all the details they don't need excluded, and just give them what they want.
Right.
One time, okay. Getting plans approved on the first shot is like
it's a dream.
It's never, that's very rare, but having to go through 2, 3, 4 revisions is unnecessary if you have somebody who knows, okay, here's my reviewer, here's the town, I know what they're looking for.
Now in our practice, we're anticipating at least one.
Right.
Because we always tell the client that you have to do X, Y, and Z. We want the town to come back and say, efficiency, this is what you need to do.
Right.
But that should be it. It should be one and done.
Yeah, and that's already an expectation that's managed. Hey, it's a finished basement with a bedroom and there's no egress window. Well, here's what's going to come back on the report.
Right. I don't want to be the one to tell you you have to put a $3,000 egress window in.
3, that's cheap.
Yeah. That's
6.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID price.
Pre-COVID.
Right.
But I'd rather the town come back and then the homeowner say, you know what, no, let's open the door up.
Exactly.
5-0 opening.
Exactly.
0 opening, and not do the window.
Right.
It's not for me to tell them what to do.
Exactly.
The town will tell you.
Right.
Right.
I totally take that approach.
Yeah.
And you expect it, and you plan for it, and then you move forward efficiently, and then it's done.
Right.
No other lacking details.
Right.
And so being able to jump on, pop in the address, get the payment submitted, schedule, measure, have those plans, all my signatures are in line, ready to go, packets complete, into the town as soon as possible. And as soon as it's issued, pay the balance, get the permit issued, inspections. It streamlines the process, which has been super important for us.
And the real estate transaction component, that's what they need.
Right.
They need this to be, they can't be dealing with a semi-retired architect who lives 6 months out of the year in Florida, and maybe they're going to come and do, or the moonlighting architect that is, doing this part-time, and now it's Christmas and he's overwhelmed, and maybe, talk to that, because you guys have probably seen it all.
Yes.
my main issue, and this is not to disparage anyone in this profession, but construction documents that go into the DOB in New York City look very different than construction documents that go into the towns and villages out here on Long Island. Yeah. And so from the Nassau-Queens border east, they look, I don't want to say simpler or more complicated. They just look different.
Yeah.
The way that New York City architects designed for the New York City DOB is strictly for what that DOB requires on their intake.
Right.
It doesn't translate out here.
Right.
So there's things that they don't include because they either get included elsewhere in the DOB application, or it's not required because it's a different animal.
Right.
A lot of them don't know what's single family. They're used to dealing with multi-story, multi-family, multi-use. A single family with a sanitary system on a quarter acre. They have no idea what to do. They have no idea what to do with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just different.
Sure.
So, when somebody says to me, my cousin's an architect in the city, I go, oh God, because I know that I'm going to have to spend time coordinating and reviewing and sending sample work. This is what a plan should look like when it gets submitted to the town, of Hempstead. These are the things that they want to see. It's very, very specific to not just to the municipality, but even to the region. I know there's an incorporated village in Nassau County that every time you show a header, you need to supply a a structural engineer's document showing the load path in a detail for every header, and it
Wow.
has to be keyed to the that's their particular
Right.
quirk.
Yeah.
Who's going to know that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Unless you've been
Right,
through it.
unless you've been through
and you're
it.
working with somebody who's been through it.
Right.
Because we'll get updates from towns. Hey, here's our new plan requirement
Right.
standard. Okay. We just went through one of those a couple months ago. I think Brookhaven issued a new standard for what they want in their plans. Okay, good. Done. Implemented.
Right.
So that's all going to be on there. It's not going to be find out by surprise. Oh, you want this now? No,
Right.
we're on top of it.
Right. So the take home for the real estate transaction space for the title deficit is to have two folks on the same team
Yeah.
that are driving towards the same goal with the thought process that the launch, the onboarding, the standardization, the putting it all together so that we can control the variables that we can control. We
Right.
can't control what the town does,
Right.
but we can control what we can control. And at a minimum, if let's say their work has to be done, plans will be done, and they could get a reasonable ballpark test estimate so they could establish a proper escrow if they have to go that route.
Right.
But at
Right.
least there's good faith that this is happening quick, right? When
Yeah.
someone comes to us, I mean, I don't know, Mary, you had a couple clients, you registered them, I think Monday. Is it Monday that you registered them? And we
Yeah, which one? The Lindenhurst
the one in
or
Lindy and the one in
New Hyde Park?
New Hyde, I think it was Monday. They came in on Monday. And
Yeah.
New Hyde Park was scanned today, and
Lindy was yesterday.
done yesterday, right? So by the end of next week or the beginning, we'll already have. You know, that's about as fast as. I mean, I don't know. You
Yeah.
tell me. You know, is that going to happen any faster? Is that?
Not really, because
No.
if I was going to, draft it myself and have to go out or have another architect go out and field measure by hand with
Yeah.
a tape measure, even with a laser, it's still, that's going to take longer than the time that it took your guys to go in there and scan.
Right.
Then, you have to take those field measurements and you have to
Translate
translate them either to paper, which is old school, or to, or to a CAD document, which is still hand drafting, except you're hand drafting on a screen. So there's a time, there's a time component that I think that
But we launched in 2 days.
Right.
Right.
And
So the onboarding is.
onboarding is fast. It's not like, well, I can't get there for 3 weeks,
Right.
And sometimes that happens legitimately for reasons, and sometimes it's just scheduling. But it was a much slower process 50 years ago, I'll say that. And even in '84 when I started, everything was still hand drafting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a longer, slower, it's a more intimate kind of a thing. But that translates to timelines that are just, in today's
Right.
economy and how things move in society, it's
Right.
borderline unacceptable,
Right, Well, right. And we've just built this out because of this. We know that people, why can't they have quick turnaround time at inexpensive rates with excellent quality? That iron triangle.
Right.
You can have pick two. Oh, we said pick three, right? And I think that with the real estate market and the rates going where they're going, I think that the sellers are going to be looking to get their properties set and proper and cleaned up as they're hitting the market. And then if they find a viable buyer that could afford these rates in today's market at these costs, they're going to be more picky. And are they going to buy a property with a history of problems? And so, we're just uniquely positioned to be able to untangle this and help everybody's real estate transactions. So,
Yeah, we know there's going to be time delays with the application process once it's in the town's hands.
right.
We
But to
need
get to
the
the town.
prior
Right.
steps, the pre-application phase of this project has to move as quickly as possible.
That's right.
Our
That's
initial,
great. The pre-application phase
Yeah.
needs to be shrunk
yeah,
as fast and inexpensive
Absolutely.
as possible. So,
get it done once,
Right.
all the pieces in place. My initial meeting with clients, we're signing application paperwork at my office
that
to make sure it's done and out of the way and I don't have to see them.
Right.
Sometimes I don't even see them again until
Right.
they stop by the office to pick up their final CO.
Sure,
Right.
sure,
And,
sure.
or I drop it off at their house, or
Yeah.
they just want it in the mail.
Right.
But that initial meeting, everything's signed and out of the way, and then it's plans. If we need a survey, it's
Yeah.
all ordered right there.
Right. So why don't we close out with this last point? I don't know how many times I've heard this. I'm sure it's the same for you. What do you mean I don't have a CO for the basement? I bought the house like this.
Oof.
I have nightmares for these things, right?
But what do you mean what do you mean this is a legal garage conversion? But they sold me the house like this. Of course the town must have this. So just as we close, just speak to that. What, I don't want to say how did they get to here, but just give everyone a dose of reality.
You want to go first?
I was going to say, do you want to go first?
I'll take it first if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
My usual initial response to that is, I'll say, do you have your closing paperwork from when you bought the house? Let's sit down and take a look at that together. And I'll tell you some of the things I found. We flipped through a title report. Municipal search omitted from the title search. So they didn't look for your COs, or they didn't include them in this report. That's one thing that could happen. Or there's a big fat statement. This house was built prior to 1959 in the town of Brookhaven before XYZ date, so you have to apply for a CEU. There's no CO for the house.
CEU is
Certificate of Existing Use. So it's just so here's this thing. That doesn't exist in another town.
Right.
They call that different.
Gotcha.
In another town.
Gotcha.
Could be called a letter in lieu,
Right.
Existing use, so it's different in every
Right.
township. But for Brookhaven specifically,
Right.
this is for homes, residential, single-family
Buyers
homes.
making this $600,000 purchase. It's probably the biggest purchase. They
Yeah.
don't know the jargon technical.
No.
But they purchased the issues of the last guy.
Exactly.
And maybe it comes up and maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it comes in, maybe it doesn't. And this is, you want to have an attorney who's on your team,
Quality guy on your
who's
team.
Who's savvy.
Who's going to look
Right.
at this,
Somebody
right?
who's savvy.
But ultimately, Mary, who rules? The town or the closing table? Who holds the correct answers as to what is legal at that house? The closing table or the town?
Unfortunately, it's the town.
the town.
Does it make a difference what's happening at the
No.
closing?
Not really.
No.
No. Because some
Not
people
really.
just like, I don't care. It's a cash deal.
Right.
I'm just buying it. I'll buy all of it. I'll deal with it.
Well,
that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
Right? But the problems follow the
Right.
property.
Exactly.
Just because you came to it, now you're saddled with this, you have to deal with this.
Right. Right.
So the language that I have been given over the years, particularly from North Hempstead, it is up to the current owner to demonstrate compliance
Right.
to all New York State
Yeah.
building
Say
and
that-
local
say that
zoning
one more
codes.
time.
It is up to the current property owner to demonstrate compliance
Yeah.
with all applicable building codes and zoning codes.
Yeah.
That's it. So you can be as mad as you want at your father who did it 20 years ago or 40 years
Doesn't
ago, and then you
make a
bought the
difference.
house, or your grandfather who you got the house from
Yeah.
in an estate. It doesn't matter if your attorney screwed up or didn't do his, none of that matters. It's
On
still
you.
your
Ownership.
responsibility.
Who's on the deed? That's the question.
Yeah, right, who's on the
I
deed?
tell
It's
all
you.
of my clients, dealing with the town is like going to New Jersey on a Friday night at 6:30, and you have to go across the Belt Parkway, and you got to cross the Verrazano, and you got to cross Staten Island, you got to get across the outer bridge. It takes too long. The tolls are too expensive. Everybody's frustrated. Someone might have to go to the bathroom in the middle of it. Somebody's car sick in the back. But when you get to the party in New
That's
Jersey,
the exact description.
of every
That's
time
the
anyone's
exact
ever gone
description.
across, right? But you get there and you get through it,
Right.
and eventually everyone has a war story about how difficult it was to get through North Hempstead or Brookhaven or Islip or whatever it is.
Right.
But at the end of the day, these guys are just doing their jobs, and we're trying to be efficient
Yep.
to get everybody through.
Definitely.
Well, guys, listen, thank you for coming in and sharing your expertise.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for tuning in, and we'll see you back here at the shop the next time we're talking shop. Thanks.